the Indian smartphone penetration is very high. India continues to be one of the biggest markets for mobile phones globally. And the pandemic was a revelation. During the pandemic, we realized, the power and reach of mobile phones. We had to migrate from call centers to digital assets overnight. And, our customers, very willingly accepted the launch of, digital assets, be it our bot, be it WhatsApp, be it our app, be it access to our portal. We were able to get them to, migrate to digital assets almost overnight. And even today, 80% of our servicing is to digital assets.
Today's episode is brought to you by Exoge International. Exoge is an executive search and recruitment training business that Fiona and myself have been working on for the last 19 years. We provide technology and innovation-focused executives to the insurance and wider financial services sector with a focus on the UK and Swiss markets. We love working with businesses and leaders who share our values here at Exoge. Those are humility, integrity, assertiveness, and resilience. And if you want to find out what our clients say about working with Exoge and how we could deliver your search in 4 to 6 weeks, then please do check out our site, exogeinternational.com. And Exoge is spelled E-X-I-G-E. And as a business, we donate 10% of all of our search revenue to forest protection charities. We do some great work with Rainforest Trust UK and have already contributed and protected some of the world's most important habitats. The other part of our business is training, where I teach a 6-week program called Found. This is where we teach executives how to interview and hire their dream team. It's a really easy 6-week program where at the end of it, I can show you exactly how you can interview and select with confidence a world-class team. If you have a search or you'd like to discuss recruitment training, then please visit our website, exogeinternational.com. Exoge is spelled E-X-I-G-E. And tell the team William sent you. In today's episode, I interview KV Dipu, the President of Operations, Communities and Customer Experience at Bajaj Allianz. Bajaj Allianz is the largest private general insurer in India. So having their President of Operations was a fantastic opportunity to explore what it's like to do true digital insurance at scale in the world's second most populous country, India. India has some truly stunning statistics. 1.326 billion human souls, speaking 20 different languages. And according to Statista, they have 687.6 million internet users today. And what is fascinating is of those, 629 million access internet through their mobile phone. Simply incredible. We have a lot to learn from the Indian market about digital product use in a young mobile population. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. And without further ado, I give you KV Dipu. Dipu, welcome to Search with Purpose. It's an absolute pleasure having you here today. Thank you very much for being with us.
Hi, Will. Thank you for having me on your show. The pleasure is mutual.
Fantastic. Well, Dipu, let's jump straight in. And I'd like to ask you about insurance in India. So what is unique about insurance in India?
Well, unlike a lot of markets, India is unique in quite a few ways. For one, customers speak multiple languages. So therefore, when you indulge in digital transformation, you need to ensure that you're catering to customers in the language that they understand. So I think that's something which is really unique about India. Secondly, the insurance product still continues to be a push product, in the Indian context. The penetration levels are about 1/3 of global penetration levels, and therefore, there is a need to take it forward. In fact, people have done research. Research scholars have come and told me that a lot of people have a fatalistic, bent of mind, in the sense that they tend to believe in fate and destiny, and therefore, they may not, feel the need for insurance. So I guess, these are some, socioeconomic factors you have to deal with, when you're the Indian context. On the other hand, I think India is digitally very advanced because India has leapfrogged several nations in terms of its digital assets. So there are a lot of folks, whom we call born digital natives, who are people who have, for example, never been to a bank branch and would have carried out all their activities on the mobile. And India also happens to be one of the youngest nations in the world. So I think the combination of youth and digital savviness also, makes it ripe for insurers, from a digital disruption perspective.
Mm.
So I'd like to pick, these three aspects: multilingual, fatalistic attitude, and youth combined with digital savviness.
Yeah, that's interesting that the multiple languages. I mean, how many languages are we talking about here in India?
Officially, India has, nearly 20 languages. But if you look at dialects, if you look at, the number of languages that, people speak as well, I think India has, hundreds of languages. In fact, I
Wow.
think it's very difficult to put a number on it.
Wow. I mean, 20
And
languages alone is
yeah, in excess
incredible.
of 20, in fact. Yeah, because Will, the way India is geographically split is on the basis of language. So for example, if you go to the south, right, you will see Kerala, where the language is Malayalam. You go to Tamil Nadu, where the language is Tamil. If you go to the east, you have West Bengal, where the language is Bengali. If you go to the west, you have Gujarat, where the language is Gujarati, right? And then you go to the north, right, where a lot of states speak Hindi. So India is, linguistically, very diverse.
And how does that affect doing business in India?
I think on the one hand, Indians have been very, very adaptable.
Mm.
So I think, there are enough people, who speak the language of their choice, when it comes to consumers, because most players have a national presence. So, we have offices where we have colleagues and distributors, who speak to customers in their local language.
Mm.
So to that extent, business, is not difficult to
Mm.
come by, in the multilingual context, because players have figured out, how to do business, in this context.
Mm.
On the other hand, when we go digital,
Mm.
in fact, we won an app, we won a global award recently for one of our apps, which was launched exclusively in Indian languages. I think that's where, we feel the need, because English, tends to be the default mode of communication, when it comes to creation of digital assets. I think increasingly players are realizing the need to be multilingual, and then, they can expand, their scope and reach. For instance, when we launched our app recently, we launched it exclusively for crop insurance customers in the rural parts of India, and we launched it in 3 Indian languages. The response has been phenomenal. The app has a rating of 4.6 on the App Store, and we won the global EFMA Accenture Award. And it gives farmers a range of services. So increasingly, as players are realizing, that we can offer services in multiple languages, I think customers will come to the party.
Hmm. I think we'll come back and touch on this idea of the way that technology has adapted um, to deliver chatbots and AI solutions in multiple languages. Maybe we can come back to that later on. But
Sure.
maybe at this moment, just kind of picking up one of the other pillars that you talked about is the youth, right? Because I'm fascinated by this. So tell the listeners about how old your typical customer is in India.
So, Will, it may be difficult to put, an exact number on, the age of a typical customer, because we have customers, across all age brackets. But I'll try and share a few statistics, which will help you understand the power of this phenomenon.
Mm.
If you look at, a lot of studies, they talk about the fact that, India has, a demographic dividend. And by demographic dividend, they're referring to the fact, the ratio of people who are earning to the ratio of people, who are dependent, that ratio, is significantly skewed positively, in India, in the sense that you have more people earning and less people being dependent. Unlike a lot of countries or nations, where the populations are increasingly geriatric, and therefore, there are more dependents than earners, and then
Mm.
the state has to step in, with social security net, so on and so forth. That challenge, does not really exist in India, because, as I said, there are a lot of earners. The second aspect is, if you look at the way India has evolved, in the last many years, it has increased its reach, on many global platforms. If you look at global majors like Facebook and of course, WhatsApp or even, Google for that matter, the substantial chunk of their user base, comes from India. And that's because, India is very heavy when it comes to internet usage and smartphone usage. So a lot of this is, driven by, the youth. So they're all, as I mentioned earlier, born digital natives. So a lot of their transactions, are on the smartphone, be it banking, be it transactions, be it business. And now with, COVID-19 coming in, everything is digital, be it entertainment, be it education, be it business meetings, everything. So I think the pace of adoption in India, I think has been extremely high, thanks to the youth and thanks to the fact that, they're all digitally savvy.
Hmm. So the average age in India is, if I'm right, somewhere between 25 and 30. Is that correct?
Absolutely, it is in that range. Will.
Wow. I mean, that is an interesting mix in which to throw digital insurance and an insurance base. And I think, like, you're right that you talk about a geriatric population in Europe. I mean, I was looking at some of the population stats earlier about India. I mean, maybe many listeners will know this already, but 1.3 billion human souls in India. In Europe, in the whole of Europe, the European states, there is 740 million people. So there is nearly double the amount of humanity in India than there is in Europe. And I mean, you talked about a push product here, right? And that there's only like 1/3 up, penetration. I mean, I find that the potential for insurance or financial products must be astounding in the Indian market. And then you're talking about having a highly digital native population, a young population who are increasingly very comfortable with accessing services via their smartphone or other digital services. It seems to be a perfect place in which to do digital insurance or digital financial services or anything digital for that matter. Yeah, I mean, let's talk a bit about that. Like, how are your customers accessing their insurance products?
Well, Will, I think you laid out the landscape quite comprehensively, and yes, certainly the time is ripe for digital disruption and digital penetration from an Indian context. Talking about how customers access products, Will, it's across a host of platforms. On the one hand, you have the traditional insurance agent, right? Your friendly neighborhood agent, so to speak, who comes and sells you the benefits of the insurance product. It still continues to, play a significant role. There have been a lot of experts who have spoken about disintermediation in financial services, especially in insurance. But I don't think, we are seeing any signs of that. It continues to be, a heavily intermediary driven product. So the insurance agent is, clearly one form of distribution. The other aspect, Will, is banks. Bank assurance, whereby customers go to banks and when they are basically getting their banking needs fulfilled. And then, when the bank, sells them insurance, that's a significant part of the insurance landscape. So bank assurance, is again, a very big platform in the Indian context. Thirdly, Will, increasingly, if you look at India, e-commerce, has a big role to play. If you look at Indian e-commerce majors, they sell, for example, mobile phones, right? They sell millions of mobile phones in a matter of seconds. And insurance companies, who sell bundled products along with them, they also sell, millions of, mobile insurance covers in a matter of minutes. Just to give you one example, we have tied up with, one of the large e-commerce majors in India. And when they sell, mobile phones on their platform, they receive feedback from their customers, about the vulnerability of the screen of the mobile phone. So we came out with a specific insurance cover, which basically caters to the mobile cover, and then we offered that as a bundled product, and then it was a win-win for everyone, for the distributor, as in for the e-commerce player, for us, and for the customer. Because everybody gains from this process, and we were able to sell millions of bundled insurance policies along with mobile phones, in a matter of seconds. So I spoke about banks, I spoke about agents, I spoke about e-commerce. Apart from that, we also have brokers. Brokers and agents are two different forms of distribution in the Indian context. We also have direct sales teams, and this comprise a mix of digital sales as well as fulfillment teams on the ground. So customers can basically approach companies through their websites. They can also approach aggregators. There are a lot of aggregators in the Indian context who basically have tied up with various insurance companies, So if you go to an aggregator's website, you can basically buy a product of your choice. And then for fulfillment, many teams also have direct sales teams, where you can, get the feet on street, to come and fulfill the needs on the ground. So it's a mix of, various, platforms,
I hear that.
brokers, agents, banks, e-commerce, and, direct sales.
And would I be right in thinking that a lot of your customers are using mobile phones to access their insurance now?
Absolutely, Will. In fact, the Indian smartphone penetration is very high. India continues to be one of the biggest markets for mobile phones globally. And the pandemic was a revelation. During the pandemic, we realized, the power and reach of mobile phones. We had to migrate from call centers to digital assets overnight. And, our customers, very willingly accepted the launch of, digital assets, be it our bot, be it WhatsApp, be it our app, be it access to our portal. We were able to get them to, migrate to digital assets almost overnight. And even today, 80% of our servicing is to digital assets. And our customers have been extremely mobile savvy.
Wow. So 80% of your servicing is through digital apps at the moment. That is an astounding number. Many people listening.
Thank you.
Yeah. What a success. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And there's a couple of things we can jump off. I'd love to talk a bit about, how you've used things like WhatsApp and how that's worked. But let's just give a bit of a macro context to the listeners. How many customers are you serving digitally through Bajaj Allianz?
So I told you that 80% of our servicing happens through digital assets.
Yeah.
And our customer base is, more than the population of the UK. So that gives you an idea.
Wow. So in excess of 75 million people.
Absolutely. Yes.
Wow. I mean,
so that's why we are digital at scale.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely digital at scale. I mean, I think that's an interesting moment just to really pause and reflect on. And maybe when listeners, I mean, I certainly wasn't aware of the scale.
Right.
Again, we come back to it, 1.3 billion people, and you're serving 80 million customers in India. And at the same time, you're doing 80% of that digitally in a market with such huge potential for expansion. And so we're talking about digital at scale here. Really is digital at scale. So now we understand the macro. Let's just drill down a little into the micro and give us some examples of the types of products that you've delivered. And I know you mentioned WhatsApp, and I know, having done a bit of research, that WhatsApp is a method, a tool that you've used. So yeah, tell us about the user case. How have you used WhatsApp to serve your customers?
So Will, what we typically do is, we try and make it comfortable for the customer. So, we start with the context where he is comfortable. So we figure out that, like I said, Indians are very comfortable on smartphone and WhatsApp. So what we did, we went and figured out our top contributors to our call center. And what we did, we built customer journeys for these top contributors on our WhatsApp. So what customers do, we send them a bit.ly link. Then they basically, initiate a WhatsApp conversation with us. And whatever is their query, be it about asking for a copy of the insurance policy, be it about filing a claim, be it about, locating, let's say, the nearest hospital, all these journeys, we then build into WhatsApp, and they basically converse with us, and they get an instantaneous service. Now, what we have done is we have integrated WhatsApp also with our chatbot. So what happens is, even if there is, let's say, an agent who is not able to service them, the bot is available. And that's why, they can avail of the service, pretty much, 24/7. And what the bot does, we deploy AI and NLP as an artificial intelligence and natural language processing. So the bot basically understands customer queries, and then responds to them. And in case there is a query which the bot is not able to comprehend, then the customer does not feel any break in service, because at the back end, there is a seamless shift from the bot to a human being. So as far as the customer is concerned, he is completely agnostic to the switch. He, continues to get serviced. And at the back end, what we do, over a period of time, we continuously keep measuring the ratio of queries answered by the bot and queries, answered with assistance from human beings. And this ratio is something we have been steadily improving over time, thanks to the usage of AI and NLP. So today, customers can, pretty much transact, on any area over the WhatsApp, and the servicing has been fantastic. And, it works for everyone, because customers get all their fulfillment done online. It's on their smartphone and on a tool they're very comfortable with. And, that's how, it's really helped us during the pandemic. and it continues to sustain itself, even though we have moved from the lockdown to the unlock phase.
Yeah, that sounds like a great use of buy, not build. And I
Yes,
think many big legacy financial institutions, insurance, banks, but also legacy or automotive, have always struggled with this balance between buy and build. And it sounds to
right.
me like you've approached it with, what works, and let's, use the best technologies which can service that and what customers are happy with. So let me ask you about how you come up with those products, because I'm interested in, like, you serving a population greater than the UK, who at the moment have something like 80, servicing 80% through digital. So how do you create a product for your clients?
So, Will, the approach we use, is fairly thought through. It always starts, with the customer. And like, some very, very customer centric organizations have said, always keep an empty chair in the room, right? Figuratively or, physically, because you need to know what the customer has in mind. So what we do is, we do a lot of research on what customer needs are, either based on direct feedback from customers or through, market surveys. And once we get an understanding of, customer needs, then what we do is, we sit down and then we take a look at our current inventory of processes, right? And then we apply Lean Six Sigma, and then we basically try to figure out what is the best way of meeting customer needs. And then once we have the right process in place, then we deploy the right technology. There is a suite of tools available, but the difference here is that we are not buzzword led, we are not technology led, rather the technology is customer led. Because only if you have the right use case, where, let's say, for example, the customer faces maximum friction, and there is a need to meet his needs quickly, do we deploy the right technology. And I'll give you a couple of examples there, right?
Please.
And then once we deploy the technology, then we obviously pilot it in the marketplace, take feedback, and then we roll it out. So let me give you an example, Will. Let's take blockchain, right? Blockchain is a concept which has a lot of halo associated with it. It's a big buzzword.
Everybody
Everybody
loves
wants to do
blockchain.
something.
Yeah.
Everybody loves blockchain. Now, what we said, we are not going to have a blockchain-led use case. Rather, like I said, we'll have a use case-led blockchain deployment. So let's take travel insurance. Now, let's imagine you're sitting in Heathrow Airport. You're catching a long flight, let's say to Australia, and the flight is delayed. Right now, typically, you would have to go through, the entire rigmarole of paperwork. Even as you're sitting in the airport and trying to figure out the next flight to catch. You're rebooking your hotels. You're rearranging your meetings. You're figuring out your transport from one place to another, so on and so forth. And then when you figure out, that you possibly can file a claim for trip delay, right? Earlier, what used to happen, the insurance company would ask you for proof of your passport, your boarding pass, some information from the airline that the flight is delayed, so on and so forth. So here we said, why don't we make life simple for the customer? He's already hassled and harried. Why don't we make it easy? So we said that why don't we get proof, immutable proof that the flight is delayed? So we deployed a blockchain-driven solution whereby we get immutable proof that the flight is delayed. Then we said that why do we need to even approach the customer? We have proof that the flight is delayed. The customer doesn't need to even let us know, right? So what we ended was we did not just move from paperwork to paperless. We moved from the customer notifying us to the customer not even needing to lift his little finger, because we know the flight is delayed. So the customer is sitting there, he's worried, and then he gets a notification from us, right? That the flight is delayed. This is the amount you're due for, paid to your bank. It's just a wow for the customer. That's how we deployed blockchain. So the use case was customer friction, and we said, no, this is the right right tool, and then we deployed that. Let me give you one more example, Will, which will basically talk about how we went beyond stated needs. Because the philosophy of meeting customer needs is not only to meet stated needs, but also to meet unstated latent needs, right? And sometimes, needs may not be expressed because customers may not be aware of the solution. So you need to sometimes create a solution and then you figure out you meet a latent need. Let's take Internet of Things. Now, as most people may be aware, a lot of players globally have launched what we call telematics. Telematics is where you launch a device in the car, and then you're able to monitor the driving habits, and the movement of the person driving the car. Because typically insurance is asset based. You are basically insuring the asset, but you and I can buy the same asset, and 1 year later, our cars can be in very different shape. right? So if you have IoT, you can basically monitor the driver's behavior, and then when it's up for renewal, you can basically increase or decrease the pricing based on the behavior of the driver. So that is the concept of telematics.
Before you go on to that, because that was interesting. I know we had spoken about this before, that
Right.
maybe listeners aren't aware that in say so maybe some of the different social dynamics or market dynamics of India. So in India, it's normal, say, if you're sort of middle class to affluent, to have a driver, correct, or to
Yes, I'm
have
coming to
somebody.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So sorry, yeah,
Yeah.
please, I was
Yeah.
fascinated
Yeah. I
by
was
this
coming to
story.
that.
Yeah, please.
Yes. Yeah. So I was coming to that. Yeah. So now in the Indian context, like we discussed, you can afford drivers, because the cost of a driver could be 1/20th of the cost of a driver in the UK or in the US. And when you have a working couple, right, and then the driver is the one who's ferrying the kids from home to school and then back. Now, all said and done, he's an employee, he's not a family member, and as parents, you will be concerned. Now, because of IoT, we launched a feature called geofencing. Now, what happens because of geofencing is that if the car strays off the beaten path, so to speak, the parents get an alert. Now, this is not possible without IoT. And this kind of a need may not have been expressed, by parents or by customers, before the existence of, this of a solution of this nature. So, which is why I said, so blockchain met, an express use case where customers, were hassled about paperwork, in terms of trip delays. And IoT met, a latent need, in terms of getting alerts, should the car, go off the path, that parents were used to. And this kind of customer wows will are not possible without the use of technology. So which is where I think, in terms of understanding customer needs, deploying Six Sigma, and then applying the right tech stack, I think this combination has really helped us take customer experience to an entirely different level.
Wow, that's it's an interesting application, and I want to come back to the idea of Lean Six Sigma. I know something we've spoken about together in the past.
Yeah.
We can explore that as well in a moment. But I suppose the natural follow-on for that is, what do you do if a product is not working?
Right. I'll start by saying, something which is a very inspiring quote from, Dalai Lama, which basically says, when you lose, don't lose the lesson, right? So I think the whole idea, is to fail fast. So what we do, Will, is, sometimes, despite customer research, if let's say a product doesn't work, then what we do is, we basically go back to the drawing board, and then, we collect customer feedback. We go back to customers and we ask them, saying that, what do you think, can be done, in order to make it, much more palatable for you. And then, based on customer feedback, because what we also need to understand here is that product extensions or product modifications do not start and end only with customer feedback. There's also a regulatory angle, because we again need to go back to the regulator, and then file the product, and get approval, and then, basically proceed. So then, based on the customer feedback, we go back to the regulator, right? And then, we look at, how to enhance the product, right? And then we, roll it out. So to give you, some examples, if you take, let us say, health insurance, right? And I'm not talking specifically about us. I'm just, trying to give you a more broad-based example, right? Let's say, you launch, a particular, health insurance product, which basically, say talks about, exclusions of, certain diseases, or, which basically speaks about some age limits. And then you basically figure out, that you are not able to, cater to the segments, which want this product. Then you take feedback, and sometimes customers are, willing to pay a higher price, depending on the need. Then you go back and say, fine, maybe I expand my age bracket, using actuarial science, you do data analytics, you expand the age bracket, and you basically look at, which are the exclusions, right? Can you, kind of, look at that universe and see, if you can maybe crunch, the number of exclusions. And then you go back, and file the product, and then take it to the marketplace. So it is sometimes about, a trial and error, where you get it right. You think of a strike zone, you get feedback that, that the strike zone is maybe too narrow. Then you go back, expand the strike zone, and then you take it to the market. So that's how, a lot of players have done.
Yeah, which I get that. And I hear that, and it sounds, very logical.
Right.
But as we found in innovation, it's never often as easy as it is to say it, right? So
Right.
Let's explore a bit about this innovation and like how you get it to happen, because there's a lot lying underneath that explanation. It's about the team culture, it's about the people. So yeah, how do you get an organization ready to deliver new products and take bad feedback?
Very good question, Will. And I think you are absolutely right. As they say, culture eats, strategy for breakfast. So you have to build, a culture, which ensures, that innovation is top of the mind. One thing, Will, which we have done is, if you look at our tagline says caringly yours. So we have ensured that, it is drilled into every single employee and partner of our company, so that everybody understands that ultimately we are here to care for our customer. We are here to meet customer worries, right? And that's why, the caring yours philosophy, cuts across everything that we do.
And this is
The other is
caringly yours. Do I get that right? Caringly yours is the statement
absolutely
you make to internally to every customer service representative, all the innovation teams, and etc. Caringly yours.
externally as well. It's our tagline. Our
Okay.
tagline is caringly yours. Yeah,
Okay.
it's what we stand for. Yeah,
Okay.
we have gone and put it out of the marketplace and said, that this is what we stand for, and therefore, we have, once we put it out there, then we have to live up to that brand promise, right? So that's what, we have basically, instilled in our entire team. Then will, like you, you said, I think the philosophy we have had is, even though we've been large and successful, you have to be, humble and, be willing to learn. So again, as a catchphrase, the philosophy that I personally espouse and I tell my team is that today the winning proposition or the winning mindset is not about learn it all. Sorry, it's not about know it all, but it's about learn it all. So I think, we are on a constant phase of, learning, picking up from the marketplace, looking at insurtechs, looking at fintechs, looking at, the global landscape. And, we're continuously on a process of, figuring out, what works for the customer. And also we look at best practices beyond our industry to figure out, how we can be the first one off the blocks. So I think carrying your philosophy as a DNA and this entire thing of, learn it all as a pragmatic, day-to-day approach in everything that we do. Then, Will, what we do is once the customer insights come in, either based on our research or based on customer feedback, like I said, that's where, we apply Lean Six Sigma. And here, as we said, we're not afraid to break anything, right? Even what we have built, because as they say, if you don't break what you did, somebody else will, right? So how do you, continuously, reinvent yourself? So which is where we apply the, the Lean Six Sigma approach. And then, what we have also done is that, we continuously monitor the entire landscape, because you will typically find, two kinds of, startups. One is startups who challenge the existing business model. And then you also find, startups, who basically attack a part of the value chain. And then they offer that as an offering, to large players like us, whereby, they'll combine with us and they get a marquee name to work with. We get a new solution. And therefore, it's a good combination of a startup, and an established behemoth, which helps all customers. So we then tie up with, establish, with startups, across the value chain.
So partnerships,
And then after,
partnerships
yes,
with existing insurtech in the Indian market or maybe internationally who can bring in solutions.
exactly, exactly. And then when it comes to applying technology, we are agile, right? In terms of, applying it quickly. So Lean Six Sigma on process, agile on technology, and then we take it to the marketplace. And a fundamental principle of Six Sigma is test and learn, test and learn, test and learn. We continuously keep doing that. It's an iterative process. And then, we, basically take it out. And we are a firm believer. We don't believe in the hare and the tortoise story, which we learned in school. We don't believe that slow and steady wins the race. We believe that fast eats slow. So therefore, we are, pretty much, quick off the blocks. And I think that's something, we have culturally now kind of managed to imprint, on our people. And, I think we just, keep going.
What does quick mean to you? I'd like to know what quick really means to you, Dipu, because so many firms that I've seen trying to do innovation, it's a painfully slow process, and by the time the product's ready to go, it seems like the market's already moved on to something else. So yeah, what does quick mean to you?
Yeah. So Will, quick is always in a context. It depends on, for example, if there is a regulator involved, then there is a certain minimum gestation period. Whereas if there is no regulator involved, then it's up to you to do it, right? But I think for us, quick has ranged, anything from same day to 1 week to, to any length of time, that you can imagine, our partners, would have wanted us to work with.
You can really do something in 1 day or a week, like taking a new product, and or is it sort of like an innovation around that? Tell me a bit about that.
Well, some of our launches have been, extremely, quick. For example, let's take, when the pandemic happened, right? We had, call centers, shutting down overnight. So we zoomed to 80% digital assets overnight. What we did, one, we embarked on a massive communication blitzkrieg. We ensured that our customers were completely aware of the plethora of options available. So that was one. The other is we bought all our assets to the party: WhatsApp, bot, app, portal, all the digital assets that we have. So we zoomed from, it's like a, like a typical bike or like a car ad, right? From 0 to 120 kilometers, per hour, in a matter of few seconds. We zoomed overnight, and it stayed. The best part is, it stayed. And to give you an example, when the pandemic started, I think, like I mentioned earlier, we did not just do a lock, stock, and barrel shift from the physical world to the digital world. We also, for example, came out with some features to meet the needs of the new normal. So, for example, when people couldn't visit doctors, we enabled, a doctor on chat feature. We did that fairly quickly. And then we also came out with the contact tracing feature called social trackback, which again, we did very quickly. We did it in the initial days of, the lockdown. So I guess, a lot of those features, came out in a jiffy.
A jiffy. I mean, maybe we could be a little bit more specific, because this is amazing. So we're talking. I think for a long time, being able to deliver a new product to market in 60 days has been seen as something that's pretty incredible. Creating a new product, at least actually getting it out to market. So in your experience, you can do that. It's possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
But what about the technology? Because maybe a lot of people thinking, okay, we can come up with a great idea. That's fine. Okay, great. If we've got a great relationship with a regulator, okay. But what about the technology? How do you create the technology infrastructure that can allow this to happen?
Yeah. So, Will, I'll answer that in two parts. One, of course, just as we apply Lean Six Sigma to processes, we apply, Agile to technology. The other aspect is, Will, the mistake a lot of people end up doing is they go for perfection. I think what's important, is to get 80% right, and then you roll out with it. You roll out a minimum viable product, and then as you test and learn, you go back and apply the balance 20%. So the 80% is out there. You test and learn, and by the time you get feedback, you apply the balance 20%, and then you're out there, with a 100% ready product. That's something which has really worked for us. These things typically end up being like an asymptote. The first 80% is ready, let's say, in X days, and then the balance 20% just keeps dragging on and on. And the curve and the line, so to speak, never really meet, and that's where we lose time.
I'm going to interrupt you there because I know you said the second part, but I have a question about this because, again, maybe many people who are listening who work in large organizations, and you're leading innovation there for Bajaj Allianz. So you're going to have business partners, peers who are running lines of business. How does this sort of quick to delivery method assist you in getting their buy-in?
So, Will, what we do is we don't put the cart before the horse. So basically, we get their buy-in before the start of the journey. If you notice, at the beginning, I said that we always start with the use case where the customer friction is the highest, and therefore we get buy-in, from the business partner, right up front. And I always try to explain this with an example. Let's say we're coming out of the contest, right? And we say the contest is, let's say, an all expenses paid trip to X country. Or the person may say that I don't want to go to X country. I want to go to Y country, right? So there is no point in building something and then thrusting it down his throat. It's better that he tells us, this is where I want to go, and then you build that. So we always go to the business owner. We pick up the right use case. Then when the buy-in is there, then we go about executing with speed, so that when it goes to market, then the adoption is quick. Because one thing which we need to realize is that if it is that you have to strike the, as they say, you have to strike the iron when it is hot. If the scale up does not happen at the moment of launch, when there is a complete publicity and communication blitzkrieg, the scale up is not going to happen subsequently, no matter how hard you try. So do all the heavy lifting right up front, and that's something I learned in Six Sigma, so that when you launch it, it's absolutely smooth.
And that's interesting, because the ability, I can imagine that being able to get that product, then get it delivered to meet with your business partner, talk to them about a need that they may have or an idea, and then take that idea and work with your teams to create a product and then get it out to the market and start showing them that there's a potential. That, for me, is just such a brilliant way to consider doing what we're doing, right? And actually getting the business to believe in innovation as a solution. So yeah, I can see that. It's really interesting. And so you've got the technology then. So you've got this very fast mode of delivery, about a way of getting buy-in, about a way of getting response from the market. But you have to have the underlying philosophy of learning mindset, and humility. Service you've talked about as a brand out to the market, and then you've got to have the teams that can deliver that. So
Right.
tell us about the building teams like this, because I'm sort of interested about how big is your innovation team and how big do you need it to be. So maybe the first question, how big is your innovation team?
So Will, if you look at my entire team, it's about 1,600 people, spread across 170 locations.
Wow.
And I'd like to believe that all of them have an innovation mindset, because we don't have a dedicated innovation lab, or we don't have a dedicated innovation COE, so to speak, because those typically end up being fixed costs, and then you're pressure to deliver. Instead, what we do, we pick cases, business use cases, then we work with startups, we get the right solution, apply Agile, apply Lean Six Sigma, and then get it out to market. So ours is innovation with zero fixed cost, from that point of view.
1,600 people, and that's a big team delivering across that market. And what, in your experience, in terms of delivering innovation, do you need to have how do you mix that? Is that technology versus innovation teams, or do you have a ratio that you're looking for? How many technologists versus how many strategists?
Yeah. So Will, to give you a very candid answer, I don't think we look at a ratio, so to speak, from a technologist versus innovation specialist, because as I said, these come into play once the use case is in focus. So our entire focus is on being close to the customer. So instead, what we look at is how many customer problems are there, what are the latent needs of customers, how do we meet them, and then it doesn't matter, because getting teams to work on solutions is not a difficult task, because you can work with an in-house team, you can work with an outsourced team, you could get a mix of startups versus our own teams to work on it. To me, that the production aspect is not the difficult aspect. The key is finding the right use case. Once we find the right use case, then I think we're all aligned, and then we make it happen. So the ratio we focus on more is more in terms of how many problems we resolve, and how many innovations we're able to bring out into the marketplace. So we measure it slightly differently.
Yeah, it's an interesting way to approach it. Getting focused on the customer problems that you're solving, and I can imagine that's a nice metric to discuss with the business. Okay, so let's sort of shift gears a bit, because I'd like you to do a bit of forward looking for us. I mean, what technologies excite you most at the moment?
Well, Will, there's a range of technologies which are out there, which are meeting meeting all our customer needs. Of course, AI and ML are evergreen favorites. We also have point solutions driven by blockchain and IoT. So from these two perspectives, from a universal range, AI and ML are exciting. From point solutions, I find blockchain and IoT exciting. And I think right now going forward, the one area I'm focused on is what we call touchless AI. Touchless UI. Wherein we are basically saying that as people are wary of touch, how do we ensure that is in this entire post-pandemic phase, we ensure that we meet customer needs, but without customers having to resort to touch. To me, that's the next frontier, and that's keeping me quite excited.
Touchless UI. So this, do you want to explain what that means? I could maybe have an idea, but I'd love to know. Yeah, tell me what touchless UI means.
Sure, Will. I'll start with a very, very simple example. Let's imagine, somebody going in an elevator today. You don't want to press that button, right? You see sometimes, people have, their hands full. They're trying to press it to their elbow. They're trying to use a sharp object, right? It can end up being quite comic at times. The same thing is happening when people are going in for servicing, because because of social distancing, and because people do not want to touch, right? Today, people are not willing to touch doors, elevators, buttons, so on and so forth. So what we have done, is we have basically brought in voice. In fact, we were among the first ones to integrate with Alexa and Google Assistant when they were launched in India. Which meant when Alexa was launched, you could ask Alexa, saying that, hey, Alexa, how can I, get this service from Bajaj Allianz, right? And it would be available to you. Wow. So going forward, what we feel is that, customers will increasingly want to use voice, so that, they just voice their command into the phone and the order gets executed. And similarly, when customers walk into bank branches, when they walk into the offices of insurance companies and various other financial services firms, the entire fulfillment, has got to be touchless, in the sense that they are not, they're not going to be, people, who are going to press buttons and, take the risk of getting infected, right? So whether it is a QR code, scanning a QR code, whether it is, about, enabling voice commands, right? Touchless user experience, right? Whether it is in the physical world, whether it's in the digital world, that is something, which we are increasingly seeing. And we're also seeing a lot of traction on voice today. So people are basically asking for a lot of services using voice, whether it is voicing into their mobile phone or whether it is voicing into any other device that they have. I think this entire area of, voice-based processing, is the next frontier.
That's a very interesting area to consider. It's funny, actually, voice command search is definitely an underestimated market. And in the
Yes.
US, voice-based search is already growing. So, and in the UK market, for example, but it's a market that many people don't know about. And it's surprising that a lot of people are saying, "Hey Google, hey Alexa, can you find me a restaurant within 5 miles? Hey Alexa, hey Google, I want to get my car repaired. Give me a garage." And I
Right.
can imagine that. Hey Google, hey Alexa, I need to claim on my home insurance. I've just broken my television.
Right.
You can imagine that, and then having that solution be solved through a whole range of just digital assets. How great! I mean, this does bring into question actually the idea of claims. And you're working in a market where there are millions, tens of millions of customers, and you must have a sheer volume of claims to deal with. So how does digital help you at Bajaj Allianz deal with claims?
Oh, well, in a very big way, Will, the claim is the moment of truth for insurance customers. And therefore, this is one area, where we are focused on, through digital assets, to create difference to our customers. So let me give you one example. The motor insurance, for example, is the biggest line of business in the Indian context. And let's say, you are driving your car, you crash your car somewhere, and then you suddenly, realize, that, it's a godforsaken place. There is nobody nearby, right? Now, what happens in a classic situation? You basically call up an insurance company, then they will, basically, send a surveyor. The surveyor will come to the spot, he'll assess the car, and then after that, you take it to the garage for repair, so on and so forth. We said, why don't we move this from the physical realm to the digital realm? So what we did was we basically leveraged a tool called Photogrammetry. So what the customer has to do is basically click photographs of the car. We tell him to click, photographs of the damaged area, the front, the back, the rear, so on and so forth, so that we get a 360-degree view. Just upload the photographs on the app. And then once the photographs reach us, we have experts, who have been assessing claims for years. They can easily make out whether the claim is fraudulent or genuine. Then once they assess the value of the claim, then we call then we communicate to the customer that, based on the photographs, this is the amount, that we think, is the value of the claim. And then the customer consents, and then, we just transfer the money to him. This happens, Will, in less than 30 minutes. It's been a game changer. Yes, it has been a game changer for us. So you crash your car, you can try it if you want. Crash your car, take photographs, send it to us. We'll assess it and send you the money in 30 minutes.
I don't know about crashing my car, but I am really impressed by that as a solution. Actually, that's
Yeah,
and hearing about that, and I
it
do
works
think
wonders.
that's incredible, because I can imagine you've got to get slick when it comes to
Right.
delivering insurance. And one of the areas I know so many in this industry are interested at the moment is parametric solutions.
Right. Right.
Is parametric solutions anything that you're working with at Bajaj Allianz in your insurance? And if so,
Yes.
could you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah. So Will, parametric, insurance, for those, who are new to the term, is essentially, trigger-based insurance, right? Where an event happens, and then, it triggers, the fulfillment of insurance. This is something, which has been theoretically out there, for a while now, and increasingly, players are resorting to that. One thing, of course, is the fact that the black swan events, as we know them, they are no longer, as rare as they were. They're happening with a fair degree of, certainty. So this is something which, we are working on. And even if you look at Allianz, as in our parent company Allianz, right? They've also been, quite, quite ahead, on this space, globally. Parametric insurance, comes into play, across a host of areas, especially when it comes to weather, when it comes to natural events, so on and so forth. So it's certainly, something, we are, actively considering.
And I can imagine actually, and you guys do have a crop solution, if I'm correct, right? That you're serving, but
That's right.
that's not currently delivered via Parametrics, if I'm also understanding. Do you want to tell us a bit about your crop solution that you have? I was just interested by this solution generally. So yeah, please tell us a bit about that.
Right. So, Will, happy to let you know, firstly, that our crop app, won the global EFMA Accenture Award last month. And this is an example of, digital, where it's digital without English. We offered this, for our rural customers. And just a few weeks back, the Internet and Mobile Association of India, they published a report which said that the number of internet customers in rural India exceeded the number of internet customers in urban India, I think, for the first time. And this is an app exclusively rolled out, as I said, for our crop insurance customers who are primarily in rural India in 3 Indian languages. Now, this app has a rating of 4.6 on the Play Store. It gives them a host of services. To start with, of course, basic insurance services, file a claim, apply for an insurance policy, ask for some information. Apart from that, it's also integrated with the government's portal, because a lot of crop insurance customers also need to interact with the government. Now, this app is integrated with the government portal. So using it as a one-stop shop, they can carry out all their information, all their processing. The other is weather plays a big role, in agriculture. So we give them weather information. Pricing, right? Pricing happens in various markets across the country. They get pricing information. They get crop diagnostics. They get crop advisory. So I think because of this entire range of services that they get in their language, and the fact that it's integrated across the government portal and across all these various sources of information, it's been a big hit with customers. And that's why, as I said, it's got a rating of 4.6, which is a very, very high rating. And also it won the global EFMA Accenture Award. So we were very happy.
Yeah,
we were sorry I'll just online.
Yeah.
So we were very happy to launch a solution which is not in English, right, for our rural customers. To the point that I made. Yeah, sorry, Will, please.
No, please. No, I'm fascinated by this, because it sounded to me there like it really was like insurance as a service, and this has been a big theme. How do we get insurance to be more and more helpful?
Yes.
So, applying the principles that you've outlined earlier in our conversation, you took this idea of looking at the most friction points, how you can provide service for the customer, and then you went about providing that and trying to integrate it with the government as well. That must have been difficult. So, I mean,
yes.
I mean, the technical difficulty, how on earth did you approach that? I mean, maybe we don't want to delve too long, but I'm just interested about the technical difficulty of dealing with government.
Well, Will, you're absolutely right. I think, partner integration is never an easy one. One, of course, is to have a conversation. The other is to get them to agree, because everybody's worried about data and security and, APIs and so on and so forth. But I think what we typically do is we always highlight, the end benefit. Here in this case, we spoke about how farmers could benefit, how they're going to benefit, how it's going to make their life easy. And I think that is what, helped us, make the conversation smooth and ensure that the partner integration actually happened.
So how does it make your customers' life easier, this app? What are the things?
Yeah. So as I told you, once it's integrated with the government's portal, then they can carry out all the transactions using this app. And the other is, as I told you, like you rightly said, it's insurance as a service. It is not just about getting information from Bajaj Allianz. It's also about, getting information from, various other entities, crop advisory, crop diagnostics, weather information, so on and so forth. So I think this entire landscape of ensuring that, it's a universal access to all the entities linked to the farmer. I think that's what made it, so much more popular for him. Now look at it from his perspective. He downloads an app. The app is easy. The app speaks to him in the language of his choice. It gives him information on Bajaj Allianz, integrates with the government, gets him information from all other sources. It just works wonderfully well for him.
And they can then they can sort of take a photo of their crop. They can insure it. If, say, there's not enough rain, if there's too much rain, if the crop fails, they can then get a sort of a loss adjuster to come out and then look at that solution and pay a solution. Is that correct?
So for claims, what we do is, because crop is spread, because crop areas, spread across, huge swathes of land, there are a lot of scalable solutions, which players have looked at. One is usage of drones. The other is, usage of satellite imagery, because sometimes it's not humanly possible to cover large areas of land, by having a human being walk through the physical areas. So we rely on, aerial tools. So drones, satellite images, and many other, many other tools we have leveraged to do an accurate claim assessment. And these tools will increasingly come into play.
Wow. Okay. So you can use a host of additional information like that with drones. That's fantastic. Okay. Well, I want to touch on something we touched about a little bit earlier and sort of just towards the end of our conversation, but we talked about lean and we talked about agile and
Right.
lean and agile. So which is better, lean or agile?
Good question, Will. In fact, there has been I think the jury is still out on this topic. People are talking about Lean Six Sigma. People are talking about Agile. The way I see it, Will, and I keep it very simple. I said Lean Six Sigma, right? Essentially, is something which you apply to a process, by which you basically look at a process, and then you re-engineer it to make it as lean as possible for the customer. That's where Lean obviously comes in. And Six Sigma, right, with all its benefits, is essentially to make it as accurate and as customer friendly as possible. That's the whole idea of doing it. So I apply Lean Six Sigma when it comes to a process. Now Agile, as we all know, is a way of getting software out there faster in the marketplace, right? So we apply Agile principles when it comes to our tech deployment. So what we do, we take the customer need first, then using the customer need, we re-engineer our process using Lean Six Sigma, and then on the re-engineered process, when we need to apply the tech stack, that's when we apply Agile methodology. So they're complementary in that sense, that the combination of Lean Six Sigma on process and Agile on technology helps you do both process re-engineering and tech stack deployment faster, and the end result is faster time to market, and obviously it keeps you ahead of competitors. So in a nutshell, and keep it simple, Will, that's how I look at it. They are different yet complementary.
So kind of a mix of the both of two of them, making sure you have a very clear understanding of what your customer need is and the journey for that customer, and then bringing in the agile methodology for maybe taking those customer stories and the features that you're looking for and delivering it through an agile methodology. Yeah,
right.
I think one of the things I've been talking to people who I admire in this space, I think really it's the philosophy that has to be embedded in the organization, and one of humility and one of learning and care for each other and your customers has to be at the heart of that. So maybe that would be something we can talk about on another day, but I know you've touched on it earlier about those philosophical values being at the heart of what you're doing, and I can imagine it's just so important for anyone listening that if you really want to deliver agile and your organization is transforming to agile, it's more than just a methodology and all the things we're talking about. It's a philosophy underpinning it, and humility and a growth mindset is certainly, I think, probably the two pillars that you have to have for that. So
if I may just add on that, Will, if I may be allowed to add just a couple of bits on that. Yeah. So your point is absolutely valid. Empathy, for instance, is very important, because you can only automate a process, but you cannot automate core human skills like empathy and creativity. So I think it's extremely important to have that. And the point that you made on humility, I think it's very important, because a lot of studies on the future of work, they basically say that this current paradigm of saying that I've studied all that I could and I'm going to work for the rest of my life, that's going to be a relic. The future is going to be about learning, working, going back to school, learning a new skill, working, and a continuous cycle.
Yeah, it's very true. And I think as we become older, the importance, and as an aging population, the importance of being able to have a second career, and to be able to evolve yourself, and just a sheer pace of change. Absolutely, I agree with that. And
right.
And as someone who is very much motivated by learning, I think that's a wonderful vision of the future. Maybe not everybody will feel that way, but certainly I do. All right, let's talk about just you a little bit, if I can, for a moment, and sort of who's influenced you and your approach to leadership.
So Will, actually, we get influenced by, or rather, I've got influenced by a lot of people. Started with my my parents. My father, when I was young, he just stacked my room with a lot of books. So that's how I picked up the art of reading. So I need to I owe that to my father. And my mother is the one who shaped me as a person, because she instilled in me the basic values of diligence, religiousness, dedication, education as an important aspect of our life, so on and so forth. So I'd say starts with my parents, because they laid the foundation of, for whatever I could do. And then along the way, Will, it's difficult to name any one person, but one thing I've observed in life, Will, is you can learn from everybody actually. You can learn from people above you, which is what typically a lot of people do. But you can also learn from your peers, and you can also learn from people who are below you, like your subordinates, and people who are relatively junior. Because I think there are a lot of human traits to pick up if you just keep your mind open, right? So I think I've been influenced by by a lot of these people. Mahatma Gandhi, for instance, has been a very inspirational figure, because imagine, using the tenet of non-violence, and during those days when there was no Twitter, no Facebook, no LinkedIn, no WhatsApp, to mobilize, a lot of people, and to instill this philosophy, right? I just think, it was amazing, the kind of impact, that he made. Because I think leadership at one level, is the kind of impact that you make on people. So I think, the impact that he's had, I think has been truly inspirational.
Yeah, I use. Thank you for sharing that, and I use Gandhi actually often as a way to describe the strength in humility,
Right,
because I think often people misunderstand that humble people are somehow weak or they're somehow submissive.
right, right,
But you think of like deep humility and the potential for strength in that approach to serving the other and realizing there is needs of others. And someone like
right,
Gandhi, wow, I mean, talk about a strength of humility, a person who was able to transform a country and
right,
leave a lasting legacy in
right,
his demonstration of humility. And yeah, that he is someone I actively reference often about that, and I'm
right.
glad that you bring him up in that way. And there's so many great sayings that are attributed to Gandhi, of course. But I think one
Right.
I love very much is you want to be the change that you want to see in the
Yes,
world, right? And maybe
absolutely.
I butcher that maybe,
Yes,
but
yes,
I think also that may come into the things that you said. We can learn from people we have all around us,
right,
be it below us in the management chain, be it higher in the management chain. Um,
right,
but ultimately, I think as a leader, as an individual, we have to be that beacon of what we want to see and what we want to
absolutely.
happen to us. And then
Yes,
hopefully that will, continue to create a rising tide. And
right,
servant leadership is something I'm exploring and something I know has been actually very important to the agile development methodologies. Servant leadership is very important, I believe, in innovation, and it's certainly, I believe, a movement that's regaining its popularity after Robert Greenleaf, and individuals that you're referencing, I think, are a great example of that. So
right,
awesome. Well, it's great to hear that's what you've done, and you're interested. Now let's go back to books, because books are one of my favorite
yeah,
things in the whole wide world. So
right.
I was glad to know that your father gave you that. So yeah, what are your favorite? I mean, do you want to give us 3 of your favorite books? And it could be anything.
Sure.
It could be
Yeah.
business. It can be fiction, anything you like.
So, Will, when I started out in school and college, right, I used to like, PG Wodehouse a lot, because I think the kind of humor that he brought to the fore, I think it was, fascinating, right? So, I used to like reading his books. And later on, when I began reading, classics, right? I think one book, which stood out for me, which is one of the first classics, written in the English language, is The Fall of the Mohicans, by James Fenimore Cooper. I think that was sorry, The Last of the Mohicans,
So last of
not
the
The Fall,
Mohicans.
The Last of the Mohicans. Sorry, by James Fenimore Cooper. I think that was a brilliant book. I read a very good book when I was in college. It's by an African writer. It's called Things Fall Apart. By Chinua Achebe. Uh, Fantastic. Just gives you a wonderful view of what was there in that particular society.
So before you move on, let's just pick this one. So PJ Wodehouse, I've read I think one of his books,
Right.
and he's got a sort of an interesting sort of goofy British sort of sense of humor
Yes.
from back in
Right.
the day. So it's cool. It's good to know. Like I love that you've got a good, you like some comedy writing as well. That's fantastic, and that's always
Yeah.
good. Like for the salt to have a laugh. Last of the Mohicans, I've not read. I mean, many people know the film, of course, but yeah, what effect did Last of the Mohicans have on you?
Well, it's very interesting. I actually read this book when I was in school, and we got this book, during the summer vacation. And this book was meant to be studied, through the year. So you basically study a chapter, come to class, then you kind of delve deep, and you go through it chapter by chapter. I just found the book interesting. I read it cover to cover. So then when we all went back to school, the teacher asked all of us, how many of you have read the first chapter? And I raised my hand and said, I raised the entire book. She couldn't believe it, for a few seconds. And then, she said, I'll ask you one question, because that question will prove to me whether you've read the book or not. And that question was, whether Magua, who's one of the central characters, was he a Delaware or was he a Huron? These were the two tribes in, in North America at that time. I'll not give you the answer, just in case the reader wants to read the book. And I answered that question correctly. And then she gave such a big tongue lashing to my classmates that during the break, they all caught me and said, "What wrong have we done? We just read the chapter. Who asked you to read the entire book?" So that's how, I remember that. But yes, I've also seen the movie, and I think, the way Daniel Day-Lewis acted, also the music in the movie, then when I saw the book come alive, I kind of, found it, fascinating. That's how, I like that book.
So maybe you learn, maybe yeah, don't be the class SWAT. Yeah, so otherwise your mates give you a kicking for that. So yeah, that's good. That's fantastic, lovely story. And then Things Fall Apart. What is that about?
Things Fall Apart, Will, is a beautiful story. It basically talks about Africa. It talks about, a socioeconomic situation, describes, how the tribes lived. And then they have basically had this sacred ground, so to speak, which they said, evil spirits would come, and, they didn't, basically go there for fear of, evil spirits. And then I think, some Christian missionaries, landed there once. And since, these guys, thought, that if nothing else, we can give them, this haunted ground, this sacred space, for them was haunted ground. So, can we give them? So the missionaries, took that. Nothing happened to them. Then I think, they built a chapel, right? And that just led to, a complete busting of myths, and then they realized, that you could have a lot of myths in your mind carried over for generations, and somebody comes in, and just builds something, and suddenly the myths get busted. So it was a very good exposition on, how to, get rid of, some myths which have just been carried across through generations, but which don't have any scientific basis, and which can, drag you back.
Yeah.
So I found that, fascinating, from that perspective.
Hey, I think that's a wonderful place maybe for us to finish, because I think, isn't it true that in insurance there are maybe a lot of myths that hold the industry back, and generally, actually, in all industries, not just insurance, but in financial services and everywhere. And it does often take just some bravery, or it takes an outsider's perspective to come in and realize that things are possible, things can change, and there is an opportunity for growth. So great. What a great place to leave our conversation. Dipu, I would like to say thank you so much, sir, for spending this time with us and sharing your experiences and educating me on all things India and the various things that you've done and achieved. It's really fantastic. If people want to find you, where would they find you on social media and on the internet and such?
Right. So, Will, firstly, thank you. As I said, the pleasure is mutual. It was wonderful talking to you. Lovely questions, and I really enjoyed the conversation. And I hope, the audience finds value in this. If people want to connect with me, I'm there on LinkedIn. Go to LinkedIn, KV Dipu. I'm there. I'm there on Twitter. I'm also there on Facebook. I'm also there on Instagram. I'm quite, active on social media. If people want to connect with me and they want to ask any questions, please feel free to do so. Always happy to, share knowledge. I'll just share one small anecdote, Will, on knowledge. When I was in, when I began working in GE, one of my managers told me, he said, if we exchange one coin each, we are still left with one coin each. But if we exchange one idea each, we are left with two ideas each. So that was a very good illustration of how, knowledge goes through distribution, while wealth may not. And that's why I'm very happy to, share knowledge in case somebody wants to reach out to me.
Wow, that's there we go. Well, that's a lovely sentiment. Thank you very much for sharing that. That's very kind. Brilliant. Yeah. So, KV Dipu, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Will, and have a wonderful day ahead.